welcome to Pedagogy and Practice. I'm looking forward to this, given that I'm probably the worst teacher on the planet. Hopefully I'll learn a thing or two. And we have everyone is here. I think you all have the programs. I won't read out each and every title, but we have Dr. Rebecca Schein, Dr. Teresa Macias, Dr. Robert Howard, and finally, but not least, Dr. Karsten Wunde.
All right, so I'm going to partly just be talking about my experience coordinating an internship program as part of the Human Rights Program at Carleton. But I also have this sort of kind of an idea that I would be curious to explore with you about the way I am thinking about my role as a mentor for students in the Human Rights Program. So I'm going to sort of start there and then talk more about what it's like mentoring students doing these human rights placements. So the title of my paper is a little different from what's in the program. I'm sort of working with this idea of coerced bad faith. So the title of my paper is Coerced Bad Faith, Experiential Learning, Cost-Cutting, and the Meaning of Relevance in Public Higher Education. So in recent months, we've seen this intensifying public discussion about unregulated internships, including a raft of horror stories, right? Students who complete as many as 10 internships while still not landing a job, students assigned menial tasks that offer no opportunity for skill development or desired profession, unpaid internships permanently displacing the entry-level positions that interns are ostensibly preparing themselves to compete for. So we're all, I think, pretty familiar with the story. So two things have been kind of striking me about the public discussion about this. One is this sort of implicit treatment of internships in much of the public discourse as a kind of hazing ritual. So, you know, you do your time, you pay your dues, you suffer the requisite indignities, but the doors eventually open to admit you to this club, right? And it's a club maybe of professional recognition, of career advancement, of middle-class living standards, or maybe it's simply the club of moving from like pay-to-work employment to get paid, maybe minimally to work, right? So but the second part of this, which is about this, the outcry over the hazing ritual, is I think that a lot of the discourse about it has less to do with the indignities of unpaid, uncompensated, unregulated labor itself than with the mounting evidence that the dues that are paid by interns are solicited and collected in bad faith. That internships do not reliably lead to paid employment, let alone entry into satisfying, stable, well-compensated careers. So I want to sort of think a little bit about this bad faith, right, which I actually think is underlying some of the outrage. You know, the broken promises made to the internship generation and the role of university campuses in this sort of bad faith arrangement. So I'm sort of playing with this idea of coerced bad faith in order to understand, to try to understand the roles played by diverse players in university-sponsored internship programs like the one that I coordinated at Carleton's Human Rights Program. So is this broken promise the best way to think about what's happening to undergraduates at the moment? And if so, who's making and breaking these promises and under what conditions? And to what extent do these sort of implicit metaphors of contractualism, right, dues paying, broken promises, enable us to understand the political economy of campus community partnerships, the expanding supply and demand at universities for experiential learning, service learning, opportunities across almost all academic disciplines, and the role played by internship host organizations simultaneously pressured into providing training opportunities and vilified for exploiting uncompensated labor. So that's sort of this idea that I'm kind of playing with, and now I want to just tell you a little bit about the program that I coordinate and sort of my deep ambivalence about being involved in it. So I coordinate this fourth-year human rights placement in the human rights program. The placements are all for Ottawa-based, mostly nonprofit organizations. And the context of this, I think, is one that we're all fairly familiar with, right? This sort of increasing focus on university community partnerships, and kind of the way that this experiential learning, service learning, and just and job training are becoming a proxy for the meaning of relevance generally. To the point where we have, our competitor down the street in Ottawa, University of Ottawa, making these really absurd claims about targeting 100% service learning experience for its undergraduates. Like literally, they're saying these kinds of things, right? No matter what field they're in. So universities, I think, are being asked to serve as facilitators for the internship generation. And I have really mixed feelings about this and the role that I very directly play in it. So on the one hand, I think well-conducted practicums can actually be really valuable learning experiences, and they can be an important kind of complement to the stuff that students are learning in more traditional classroom settings. But I also feel like I am implicated in a false promise of professionalization and employment. But I'm also, because of the field that I'm in, human rights, or field such as it is, I'm also implicated in the NGOification of the very material that I'm involved in teaching them about, right? So the kind of professionalization of advocacy rather than politics, the provision of services that should be public, the reliance on funders, all of the things that we're familiar with as dimensions of NGOification. I am directly part of producing, right? So, and when I talk to students, they justifiably want meaningful work. They see the nonprofit sector as a place they can look to find paid work that's related to what they've been learning. And I am absolutely, sympathetic and convinced by, I want to support their desire to have work that is, as some of them have said, not evil, not boring, right? I want us all to have work that is not evil, not boring. So the nonprofit arena starts to look like a sector for which human rights students are training, right? Which I have a problem with. And this is not just because of the absence of good jobs in the nonprofit sector that I have a problem with this, but because of the impact of professionalization on these sorts of things that we're talking about. So it turns the program that I've been involved in into training for a sector rather than education, right? Politicization directed into professionalization. And how am I doing on time? Okay. So one of the things I'm also very sympathetic to, and this relates a little bit, Joel, to the conversation we just had about risk. I have these students who are, in many cases, have fought with their parents to major in human rights, right? To get an undergraduate degree in human rights, and the reason they fought with their parents about this is because this seems like a risky degree to take, right? And so they often, by the time they get to my fourth year practicum, they are saying, thank God this exists, because this is the thing that has justified to my parents that there are actual careers, and that this is a legitimate thing, right? There's a sector for which I am being trained, and this is a career that I can, So it has this kind of, you can see, I feel like I'm seeing on the ground the translation of this relevance, job training thing, the legitimation process that's happening in a very kind of material, like personalized way for my students. So they have this, they want this legitimation. They have a sense that they have a fear about their, totally justified fear about their future, and a sense that, not all is right with the world. And I think it's something, I feel that my role as a mentor in this context should be to, in some way, affirm that this isn't just sort of banal, like every generation feels this angst when they finish school, that in fact they are being screwed, right? And that in fact there is something specific going on. And so I feel this kind of political impetus to say, like, yes, this is what's, like, what you are feeling right now is justified anxiety. Here's how this fits into this bigger picture. At the same time, I feel a lot of pressure to, and this is where the kind of coerced bad faith comes in. My program, I this week have had not one but two requests to go and talk to other departments on campus about my program's internship program, because they want to start other ones, right? To recruit students, right? And I've been told in advance that the message that they want to hear from me is, this is great. It doesn't require a lot of resources. The students love it, and it attracts new students, right? So there's this sort of, I don't want to just tell them everything's going to be okay. At the same time, I feel an obligation when I have individual students in my class to support them and to try to figure out ways to maximize their, the benefit that they accrue as individuals from engaging in these placements. And also to sort of think about, practical ways that they can, and simultaneously say there is unemployment and you aren't all going to win, but I also can't do that individually, right? I also have to say, and you need to cultivate these professional skills and attitudes that that if I don't do that, I won't be doing my job, right? So there is this, and that's where the coercion of this bad faith comes in, right? And this is where I feel really conflicted about how to actually ethically participate in this endeavor. I think I'll sort of wrap this up by saying my own, and this is, I feel a little cheap about this, even as I believe it deeply, that the only way that I sort of can feel sort of okay about my mentorship relationship with them is to try to think about the ways that the kinds of skills that I try to validate in their internships also have something to do with political skills and organizing skills, and sort of, that being able to, that we can't also abandon to the sort of professionalization and geoification many of the skills that are actually also useful when directed in other ways. So that's sort of one of the ways that I get around this. That some of these things can be sort of parried into politics in useful ways. The thing I just want to sort of close on, I guess, is that, and part of why I'm playing with this idea of coerced bad faith is precisely to think about, to get away from a sense of like dupery, that old kind of sense that, either the students don't know what's going on as they are, hoping that this meritocracy actually works and that they're going to win, if they're just good enough, if they do 10 or maybe 11 internships, they'll be okay. But also that even right down, at all levels of these, the different players in these organizations, we have these intense pressures for us to play this game. And coming down to like me with a student in my office, also, the nonprofits that are, that are treated as this infinite resource of free supervision for our students, right? That one of the things I feel obligated to go to when I go to my fellow departments is say, like, there actually aren't endless nonprofits out there that can supervise our students for free, right? And we actually have to, like, I don't know, have some custodianship over this resource of people's time and energy. And anyway, so I'll leave it there. I'm curious to hear what people think about this idea of coerced bad faith. Thank you.